Welcome back, everyone. Today we will be reading Book 8, so let's get into it. Book 8, How They Held Games and Sports in Phaiacia. As soon as the first gleams of dawn appeared, King Alcinous sprang out of bed, and up rose Prince Odysseus. Alcinous led the way to the Parliament Square by the quay. And there they sat down on the seats of polished stone, side by side. Meanwhile, Pallas Athena took the form of the king's herald, and went up and down in the city to arrange for the convoy of Odysseus. And to every soul she met she spoke, and said, "This way, lords and princes of the nation, to Parliament, and you shall hear about the stranger who has lately come to the palace of your wise king. After long travel on the sea, a man who seems like a visitor from heaven." This made them all eager and curious to hear. Soon every corner and every seat was filled for the gathering people. Crowds were there gazing at the stranger. Great dignity was about his head and shoulders, and he looked taller and stronger than before. This was the grace of Athena, who wished that all beholders might fear and respect him, and that he might be ready to do the many feats which the Phaeacians tried him with. When they were all there, Alcinous addressed the assembly. "Lend me your ears, my lords and princes of the nation. I have something which I wish to lay before you. The stranger beside me, I do not know who he is, has come in his travels to my house. Whether from the east or from the west, he asks us to help him on his way, and begs for a sure promise. Then we, as our ancient manner is, must help him on his way. That is a matter of course, for no one who comes to my house has ever to complain of delay as far as that goes. Very well, we will launch a new ship and choose 52 of our best oarsmen. Sling the oars ready beside the thwarts, and then come ashore, and you shall find a meal ready for you in my house. I will see about that, and there shall be plenty for everyone. So much for the lads. You, my lords, all who are here, come up to my house now, and we will entertain our visitor. I will take no denial, and send for the minstrel Demodocus. There is no one like him to make us merry, if he is in the mood to sing. A divine gift, that is indeed." So the king went home with the princes, and a herald summoned the minstrel. 52 picked men launched the ship, and put mast and sails aboard, and ran the oars into the leathern, thole slings, all ship shape. Then they hoisted the white sail, and moored her in deep water. This work done, they made haste to the palace. All the open galleries, all the courtyards and rooms were full of men. Alcinous had killed 12 sheep for them, and 8 tusker boars, and 2 oxen. These were skinned and got ready, and the cooks prepared a most inviting meal. Now Pontonous, the herald, arrived with the minstrel. This man was the muse's darling. But she had given him evil mixed with good. She took away the sight of his eyes, but she gave him the lovely gift of song. The herald placed a chair of state for him against a tall pillar, and hung up the well-turned harp on a peg over his head, guiding his hand to touch it. Then he set out a table beside him, with a bread basket and a cup of wine upon it, in case he wanted a drink. The guests fell to, and when they had had enough, the spirit moved the minstrel to sing the stories of famous men. He began with that lay which had already become famous all over the world, the quarrel of Odysseus with Achilles. How they wrangled with hot words at a banquet, and how King Agamemnon was delighted, and this was the reason why. Before the war began, when the storm clouds were beginning to roll up over Trojans and Danaans by the ordinance of Zeus, Agamemnon had visited the sanctuary of Pytho to inquire of Apollo, and the god had told him that the best men of the army must quarrel, and then he would take the city of Troy. He thought this was the quarrel, and so he was glad. So this was the song the minstrel sang, but Odysseus, when he heard it, caught up his purple robe in his hands, and drew it down over his head, hiding his face. For he was ashamed to let the company see the tears in his eyes. Whenever the singer paused, he would wipe his eyes and throw back his robe, and pour out a few drops to the gods from his cup. But the diners enjoyed it too, much to let the singer stop. And as soon as he went on, Odysseus would cover his head again and give way to sorrow. No one noticed him but Alcinous. But he was sitting next to him and saw what he did, and heard his groans. So at last he spoke. "Look here, gentlemen. We have had enough of our feast now, enough of banquet's bosom friend, the harp. Let us go out and try our luck at games and sports, that our guest may report to his friends when he gets home how we beat the world at boxing and wrestling and jumping and running." At this hint, they all got up and went out after him. The herald hung up the harp on its peg, and led out Demodocus after the others. All made haste to the ground, and a huge crowd followed, thousands of them. Young champions were found in plenty. Topship and Quicksea and Paddler, seaman and poopman, beacher and oarsman, deep sea and lookout, go-head and up aboard. There was Seagirt, the son of Mini-Clipper, Shipritson. There was Broadsea, the very spit of bloody Ares himself, and Admiral Tides, the finest man in stature and strength after the admirable Laodamas. And there were 3 sons of Alcinous, Laodamas and deep sea Helios and Clintinios of naval renown. The first contest was a foot race. The running was fast from scratch to finish. They went tearing along over the course all in a bunch, except Clytinios. He was far and away the best and beat the field by the breadth of the mule's day work on fallow land. Next came wrestling, and Broadsea won. At jumping, Seagirt was first. The rest nowhere. Paddler was easily first at putting the weight, and in the boxing, Laodamas, the king's son. After that good sport, Laodamas said, "I say, you fellows, let's ask the stranger what he has learnt of games in his school days. He is not bad to look at. Good thighs and calves, and a good pair of arms on him, a strong neck, hefty and not too old. But he's broken down with hardships. I declare there's nothing worse than the sea to wear a man out, however strong he may be." Broadsea answered, "Excellent! You go and make the proposal. Challenge him yourself." So Laodamas went forward and said to Odysseus, "Come along, father. Have a try at the games yourself, if you ever learnt 'em. A man ought to know about games. Game is the best way to fame while you're still alive. What you can do with your arms and legs. Come along, have a try. Begone, dull care. You haven't long to wait now. Your ship is afloat, and the crew ready. Odysseus answered, Why do you say that, Laodamas? You are all making fun of me. My mind is more set on troubles than on games. Suffering and sorrow is what I have had so far. I am here in your gathering only as a suppliant to your king and people, and all I want is to get home. But Broadsea thought he would get a rise out of him and said, Ha, well, sir, I would not put you down as a fellow who goes in for games, though that is the way of the world, you know. Skipper of a trading crew is what you look like, plying in a broad hooker. Thinking of cargo, keeping an eye on the goods, and grabbing what profits you can. You certainly have not the look of a sportsman. Odysseus said with a frown, Sir, I do not like your way of speaking. We know the gods do not grant all the graces to any man, handsome looks and good sense and eloquence together. One man is not much to look at, but God crowns his words with beauty, so that all may listen to him with delight. He speaks in a steady voice with winning modesty. He is notable where men gather together, and as he walks through the streets, all gaze upon him as one inspired. Another, again, may be handsome as a young god, but there is no crown of grace upon his words. So you are as handsome as God can make a man, but your mind is empty. You have made me angry by your bad manners. I am no duller in sports, as you say, but I think I was among the first, while I could trust in my youth and my hands. Now I am tired and worn out with perils in battle and perils of the sea. Well, never mind that. I will try my hand. You have cut me to the quick, and I cannot sit still any longer. He sprang up, cloak and all, and seized a huge, big weight, far heavier than any of the young men had been using, and with one whirl round his head, he cast it strongly. The stone went whizzing through the air, and all the stout seamen standing by crouched down as they felt the wind of it. Over all the marks of the others, it flew like a bird. The man marking the throws was really Athena, and she called out, A blind man could find your mark, stranger, by fumbling. It's a long way out of the crowd. You need not worry. No one will reach it, much less beat it. Odysseus was pleased to find a real friend on the ground, so he said gaily enough, Touch that if you can, young men. If you do, I think I'll follow it up with another as good or better. Has anyone else a mind for something? Out with you then, and take me on. You have put my back up, and I don't care what it is. Box, wrestle, run, any one you like except only Laodamas. He is my host, and who would fight with a kind friend? I call that man a good-for-nothing fool, who would set up to rival his host at a game in a foreign land. He is docking his own tail. Anyone else, I say, no one bared. Anyone is good enough. I'll try a bout with him, man to man. I am not a bad hand at any game that's going. I know well how to handle a smooth bow. I can pick off my man first out of the enemy ranks, if there are heaps of my comrades shooting at the fellows. Only one man beat me before Troy with bow and arrows, and that was Philoctetes. As for all the men who now eat bread on the face of the earth, I say I am better than any of them, but not the characters of ancient history. I should not care to match myself against Heracles, or Eurytos, or the Auclane, who dared to stand up to the immortals. That is why Eurytos never lived to grow old. He challenged Apollo to a shooting match, and Apollo was angry and killed him. As for javelins, I'll throw one as far as you can shoot an arrow. I am afraid of nothing but the foot race. Someone might beat me there, for the sea has been too much for me. There is no great comfort aboard ship, and my sinews are all slack. All were silent at this, but after a while Alcinous spoke for the rest. My dear sir, do you not offend us by your frankness? You are quite right to stand up for yourself when someone sneers at you as this man did. You make it quite clear that no one who can talk sense could ever question your powers. But now let me say a word, please. We are anxious that you should take away a pleasant memory of our performances. We have our own powers, you know, which Zeus graciously gave to our fathers, and they handed down to us. When you are at home again and sitting at dinner in your hall with your wife and children, we hope you will remember us and tell them the story. The truth is, we are not first-rate boxers or wrestlers, but we are fine oarsmen and the best of seamen. Our delight is in feasting, in music, in dancing, plenty of clean linen, a warm bath and bed. Come now, out with the best of our dancers. Let our friend have something to tell his friends when he gets home. How we beat the whole world at shipwork and footwork, dancing and song. Fetch the harp, someone, off with you on the spot, and give it to Demodocus. It is somewhere in the house. No sooner said than done. Away went the herald to fetch the harp. The stewards appeared, 9 men appointed to be masters of the ceremonies. They cleared the ground and made a good tidy ring. Then the herald brought the harp to Demodocus, and he stepped into the middle. Groups of blooming boys circled about him, footing it round and tapping the ground. Odysseus was fairly amazed to see their twinkling feet. The harper struck up a tune and sang the loves of Ares and Aphrodite. He told how first they lay secretly in the house of Hephaestus himself. Ares brought her many gifts, and dishonored the bed of Lord Hephaestus. But before long Helios, the sun, came and told him that he had seen them lying in a loving embrace. Hephaestus heard the cruel tale, and straight to the smithy he went with a plan of vengeance in his heart. He set the great anvil on the stand, and forged chains that could not be broken or loosened, to hold the pair immovable. When he had fashioned this net for Ares in his hot anger, he took it to the bedchamber, and fastened the meshes over the bedposts, and down from the roof beams, network fine as a spider's web, which no eye could see, not even the blessed gods themselves, a masterpiece of clever work. As soon as he had draped the cunning net to perfection, he made as if he were going to Lemnos, for he loved that noble city best of all, but Ares kept no blind man's watch. He saw the master craftsman going away. He made haste to the house of the famous smith, eager for the love of garlanded Cytherea. She had just come in from almighty Cronion, her father, and there she was sitting in the house when he entered. He clasped her hand and said, "Come, my love, let us to bed and take our joy. Hephaestus is not in the place, but I think he is gone already to Lemnos, to hear the barbarous talks of those Sintians." She was filled with joy at the thought, and they lay down on the bed. Then the craftsman's clever net closed round them, and they could neither move nor lift a limb. At last they knew there was no chance of escape. Hephaestus was close by all the time, and now he came hobbling along. He had turned back before he came to Lemnos, for Helios had been on the lookout and told him what had happened. He stood in the doorway, with fury in his heart. He roared aloud and called to the gods, one and all. Father Zeus, and all you blessed gods who live forever, come this way and see a fine joke, an intolerable piece of impudence. Because I am lame, this daughter of Zeus, this Aphrodite, forever treats me with contempt. She loves this murderous Ares because he is handsome and has 2 sound feet on him, and I was born a cripple. Why blame me? It is my parents' fault, not mine, and I wish I had never been born at all. But you shall see where the loving pair are sleeping, on my own bed. It makes me sore to see that. Well, I don't think they will care to lie like that one little minute more, fond lovers though they are. Before long they won't want to sleep, neither one nor the other. But there my ingenious arts will keep them until her father pays back my marriage gifts, every jot, all I paid for the sake of this bitch, because she was a pretty girl. But she does not know how to behave herself. At this call, the gods crowded to the smith's house. Up came Earthshaker Poseidon. Up came Hermes Euryneos. Up came Apollo, prince of archers. But the goddesses were too modest and stayed at home. There stood the dispensers of all blessings at the door. A roar of unquenchable laughter rose from the blessed gods to see the skill of Hephaestus, the master craftsman. You might have heard them say to one another, Honesty is the best policy. Slow catches quick, as now slow old Hephaestus has caught Ares, the quickest god in Olympus. The lame dog wins by his wits. Now there's damages due to the cuckold. Amid this kind of banter, Prince Apollo, son of Zeus, said to Hermes, My dear Hermes, son of Zeus, king's messenger, dispenser of blessings, would you like to sleep with golden Aphrodite and have that strong net smothering you close all around? King's messenger Argiphantes answered, I only wish I could. My dear Lord Apollo, prince of archers, wrap round me 3 nets like that with no way out. All you gods look on, and all the goddesses too. I would sleep with golden Aphrodite. The gods burst into laughter at this. Only Poseidon did not laugh, but just begged the famous craftsman to let Ares go. Let him go, he said, and I give you my word, as you ask, that he shall pay all that is justly due in the presence of the immortal gods. But the famous Crookshank god answered him, Do not ask me that, Poseidon Earthshaker. Go bail for a cheat, and he'll cheat you out of your bail. How can I put you in the net if Ares gets out of net and debt together? To this, Poseidon Earthshaker made reply, Hephaestus, if Ares gets out of his debt and shows a clean pair of heels, I will pay you the debt myself. Then the famous Crookshank god gave answer, I cannot and I must not refuse your offer. So Hephaestus, angry still, undid the net. Once free from the inextricable bonds, the two were off like a shot, he to Thrace and she to Cyprus, smiling broadly, away to Paphos and her temple and altar of incense. There the Graces bathed her, and rubbed her with oil divine, such as the deathless gods refresh themselves with, and they clothed her in lovely garments, a wonder to behold. So sang the famous singer. Odysseus was delighted as he listened, and no less that whole nation of seafaring men. Alcinous next told Helios and Laodamas to dance alone, since no one wished to compete with them. So they took in hand a fine purple ball, one of the clever works of Polybos. One of them would bend his body backwards and throw up the ball into the clouds. The other would jump high and catch it lightly in the air before his feet touched the ground again. After throwing it straight up in this way, they danced on the level ground, throwing the ball one to the other again and again. The lads beat time, standing round the ring, with clapping hands. At this, Odysseus said to Alcinous, "My lord Alcinous, you boasted that your artists of the dance were the best, and here it is really before us. I am amazed at the sight of them." This delighted the royal prince, and he called out at once to the company, "Do you hear that, my lords and gentlemen all? Our guest seems to be a man of mighty good sense. Come now, let us give him the stranger's due as is right and proper. We have 12 distinguished princes who rule over our people, 13 with myself. Each of you bring him a mantle newly washed and a tunic, and a nugget of fine gold. Let us make haste and get these together, that our guest may have them in hand and go in happy to his dinner. And Broadsea must make his peace with a gift and an apology, since he was rude to him just now." The princes applauded this. Each did his part and sent his marshal to fetch the gifts. Broadsea, too, said, "My lord Alcinous, surely I will make my peace with our guest, as you bid me. I offer him this sword of bronze with a silver hilt, and a new sheath of ivory to hold it. This ought to make amends for a good deal." Then he placed in the stranger's hand the sword with its knobs of silver and said simply, "I salute you, father. If I have blurted out an ugly word, may the winds carry it away. May the gods grant you to come safe to your native land and see your wife after all your long sufferings far from your friends." Odysseus answered, "I wish you well also, my friend. May the gods give you happiness, and may you never miss the sword which you have given me with this handsome speech." Saying this, he slung the sword over his shoulder. The sun went down, and the gifts were all there. The servants carried them in, and the king's son laid the magnificent gifts before their honored mother. Soon the others came in, led by Alcinous, and took their seats. Then Alcinous said to Arte, "My dear, bring out the best coffer we have, and lay in it a newly washed mantle and a tunic. Warm a copper over the fire, and get hot water for him to bathe. After that, he may see all the gifts of our excellent princes laid neatly out, and have a good dinner with music and song, and I offer him this goblet of wine, a real beauty, pure gold, that he may remember me all his days, as he pours the sacred drops in his hall to Zeus and all gods." Accordingly, Arete directed her women to set a large tripod over the fire at once. They put a copper over the blazing fire, poured in the water, and put the firewood underneath. While the fire was shooting up all around the belly of the copper, and the water was growing warm, Arete brought out a handsome coffer from her room and laid all the gifts in it, clothes and gold, which had been collected, and she added a mantle and a fine tunic, and said to Odysseus, "Look to the lid yourself, and fasten it quickly, that no one may do any damage on the way while you are sleeping soundly on board ship." Odysseus at once fitted on the lid, and fastened it up with an intricate knot, which Circe had taught him. Then the housewife told him his bath was ready. Glad indeed he was to see the warm water, for he had had little comfort since he left the house of beautiful Calypso. But there he was treated right royally, and lived like a god. So the woman bathed him and rubbed him with oil, and put a tunic and a fine robe on him, and he passed from the bath to the feasting company. As he went in, by the doorpost of the hall stood Nausicaa, looking as lovely as if she had stepped down from heaven. She gazed with admiring eyes at Odysseus while she said, "I wish you a happy voyage, sir, and I hope you may sometimes remember me when you are on your native land, since you owe me first the ransom of your life." Odysseus answered, "Princess Nausicaa, the Sea King's daughter, if only Zeus Thunderer will grant me once more to see my home in my native land, then be sure I will ever remember you in my prayers, for you gave me life, dear girl." He passed on and found his seat by the side of King Alcinous. They were already serving out the portions and mixing the wine. A marshal led in Demodocus, their excellent minstrel, whom the people honored. He placed his seat in the midst of the guests, with its back to a tall pillar. Then Odysseus called to the man as he cut out first a piece of boar's chine, which had been given to him, and more was left behind with plenty of fat on both sides. "Here, Marshal, take this to Demodocus, and give him my kindest wishes, for in every nation of mankind upon the earth, minstrels have honor and respect, since the Muse has taught him their songs, and she loves them one and all." The marshal took the slice and set it before Demodocus, who accepted it with great satisfaction. Then they all fell to. When they had eaten and drunk as much as they wanted, Odysseus called out, "Demodocus, I commend you above all mortal men. You must have been taught by the Muse, the daughter of Zeus, or by Apollo his son, for you sing only too well the fate of the Phaeacians, all they did and suffered, and the hardships they went through, just as you had been there yourself, or heard it from one who had. Now change the tune and sing the contrivance of the wooden horse, how Epios made it with the help of Athena, and Odysseus brought it into the citadel by way of stratagem, full of the men who sacked Ilion. Then, if you tell the story all right, I will declare at once to all the world that God has been generous to you and inspired your song." Then the inspired minstrel delivered his song. He began where the Phaeacians embarked in the fleet and sailed away, after setting fire to their encampment. But by that time the illustrious Odysseus and those with him, hidden in the horse, were in the marketplace of the city, for the Trojans themselves dragged it into their citadel. There stood the horse. There stood the people all round, doubtful what to do. 3 plans found some favor: to break up the wood with axes, or to drag it away and cast it down from the rock, or to leave it as an offering to appease the gods. This last plan was taken in the end, for it was their fate to perish when the city should admit that great wooden horse, with all the best men of the invading host within it, to bring ruin and destruction upon Troy. He sang how the sons of Phaiacia left their lair and poured out of the horse and laid waste the city. He sang how they went this way and that way, sacking the place. And Odysseus came to the house of Dephobos, like another god of war, along with royal Menelaus. That was the most dangerous of all his battles. So the minstrel said, and won after all by the help of Athena. So sang the famous minstrel. Odysseus was melted, and tears ran over his cheeks. He wept as a woman weeps with her arms about a beloved husband who has fallen in front of his people, fighting to keep the day of ruin from city and children. when she sees him panting and dying. She throws her arms around him and wails aloud, but the enemies behind her beat her about the back and shoulders with their spears and drag her away into slavery, where labor and sorrow will be her lot, and her cheeks will grow thin with pining. No one else noticed his tears, but Alcinous saw clearly enough, sitting by his side, and heard his sobs. At once he called out to the company, "Listen to me, my lords and gentlemen. It is time for Demodocus to quiet his harp. Not everyone is pleased by the song. Ever since he began to sing at this supper, our guest has been grieving. His heart must be full of sorrow. Well then, let the man stop, that we may all be merry, host and guest alike, which is much the best thing. All this has been arranged in honor of our guest, food and escort and friendly gifts, which we offer in goodwill. Stranger or suppliant stands in a brother's place to any man who has a touch of good feeling. And you too, sir, don't be so reserved. Don't try to hide what I ask you. To speak out is the best thing. Tell me what name you go by at home, what your mother and father call you, and the people of your town, and your neighbors all around. No one on the whole world is without a name, high or low. His parents give him some name as soon as he is born. Tell me your country and people and your city, that our ships may aim at the right place in their minds. For we, Phaeacians, have no pilots. Our ships have no steering gear like other ships, but they understand of themselves the thoughts and intentions of the seamen. They know all the cities and countries in the world, and cross the gulf of the sea at full speed, hidden in clouds and mist. There is no fear they will ever come to harm or be lost. I will tell you what I heard from my father, Nausithous. He said that Poseidon would be jealous of us one day, because we gave safe convoy to all. One day, he said, Poseidon would smash one of our ships coming back from convoy in a fog, and he would throw a high mountain round our city. So the old gentleman said, God can do it or not do it, as it shall please him. Now tell me all about your travels, what countries you have visited, what cities of civilized men. Tell us who are savages and lawless men, who are hospitable and God-fearing, and tell us why you are so unhappy when you hear the fate of Argives and Danons and the fall of Troy. All that was the gods' doing. Their thread of destruction which they spun for men, to make songs for future generations. Perhaps a kinsman of yours died before Ilion. Some good man and true, your good son or your good father, who come closest to us after our own blood. Or perhaps a friend, a man dear to you, a good man. For a comrade and a decent fellow is indeed no less than a brother. That's it for today. Next week, we will see you guys with Book 9.